Ponder, ponder, world of wonder. Things are rarely what they seem, but if we learn to handle life, it doesn't have to be so mean. Survival is life's prime directive, but life is a matter of perspective.
Little babies growing up, they learn to feel, they learn to touch, they learn to trust, for they have faith. But as time goes on, we learn to hate. Dear God, I beseech thee, only once again, please teach me how to love. I want to write a happy song, but where to start? Oh, it's been too long.
Today's commentary deals with reparations for Black America. President Clinton's recent flirtation with an apology to the Black community in America for enslaving our ancestors, while not at this point culminating the way we would like for it to, nevertheless is a very important step in the lives of we the children of Africa who have resided in this country as a result of kidnap and capture for the last 4 centuries. Clinton declined to apologize at this point because he feared that the apology would lead to a demand for reparations by the people now called African Americans. He's both right and wrong. He's right because surely African Americans are in the process of demanding reparations from this country. He's wrong because his apology or lack of one will not affect this demand in the least. The whole situation is really quite ironic and clearly illustrates the duplicity this country and its leaders are capable of. Clinton's decision to not atone for one of the greatest crimes in human history is not based upon the obvious wrongs that have been perpetrated by this country upon Black people, but is decided rather by economic correctness, and the hypocrisy continues. Let us take a look at the concept of reparations, which has frightened white America so. Reparations is a term used to apply to redress due one people by another. It is sometimes referred to as damages or compensation. Its etymological root is the word repair, and at the international level, reparations is required because of massive national crimes committed by one people or one nation against another. These massive crimes so disrupt the natural growth and development of the aggrieved people that monumental repair is what is needed to allow their national self-determined contribution to human evolution. Reparations are a well-established principle of international law, and the concept and practice of it extends back at least as far as the days of the Old Testament Hebrew Israelites. It is also an international legal practice that the United States is very familiar with, having been involved in either paying reparations, seeking and collecting reparations, as well as in negotiating reparations on behalf of wounded states. Reparations as it applies specifically to the people called African Americans is defined by Dr. Robert Brock, Executive Director of the Self-Determination Committee and longtime reparations activist, as the demand by U.S. slaves and their descendants on the government of the United States of America and its individual white men, women, and children, and all others of the free structure and their heirs following in interest, inheritance, use, and benefit through possession for payment and return and restoring and taking back for damage, hurt, harm, injury, loss, and wrong in the form of, number 1, money, specifically gold, goods, services, land, and finally, treaty under international law not to recapture. Reparations are due us for both slavery and post-slavery activities. I maintain that African Americans are in the 3rd broad phase of our existence here. The first phase began with our collective kidnapping and ended with the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which legally ended chattel enslavement. The second phase began during Reconstruction and accelerated after the Plessy versus Ferguson decision of the Supreme Court of 1896, which legalized the era referred to as Jim Crow, or separate but equal, or legal discrimination. This era ended in 1968 with the passage of the 3rd great civil rights bills. The Civil Rights Bill of '64 ended discrimination in public places, among other things. The Civil Rights Bill of 1965 is also called the Voters' Rights Act and imposed federal authority in the Deep South, which was designed to compel these states to allow African Americans to register and vote. The Civil Rights Act of 1968 is also referred to as the Fair Housing Act and was designed to eliminate discrimination in buying and rental of real estate. The most significant feature of these first two phases is that black people as an entire collective was committed to ending both enslavement and legal discrimination. Now we are in the third phase. This third period has lasted from 1969 until the present, and it can be characterized by both its lack of significant collective African American social, economic, and political achievement, as well as its lack of collective African American vision for continued cumulative empowerment. I maintain that this third phase should be dedicated by new Africans to attaining self-determination, and that reparations is one of the more powerful tools we can use in the endeavor of attaining self-determination. The one thing that we need to remember as white America begins to examine its conscience and begins to question exactly what is due the group of people called African Americans is that through our spiritual force, this is the way that we have forced this nation to change. It can be argued that the spiritual force of African American people caused the Civil War to come about, the Civil War that ultimately was able to free us from legal enslavement. Our spiritual force is very, very obvious during the second phase when our children went into the streets in the South in the 50s and the 60s and demanded that Jim Crow be overturned, and also when our children went into the streets in the North and West in the late 60s in the quote-unquote urban rebellions, and once again forced America's hand and forced them to deal with situations such as civil rights, affirmative action, etc. This same moral and spiritual force that our people have activated to help us get to where we are now can be activated to take us beyond this port, take us to self-determination, and also can force this country to pay us reparations. So I have to say to President Clinton, either you can be a part of this force, this social force that is once again going to change the face of America and apologize and attempt to make this wrong as right as possible under the circumstances, or you can be drowned in it. Thank you.
It's time to speak up, America. Locate and call your elected officials and representatives. Call the mayor. Call the governor. If you don't speak up, if you don't fight back, the cavalry is never coming. It's speak now or forever hold your peace. America, it's time to get busy. Stay tuned for more of A Matter of Perspective.